Okay. Everybody just take a deep breath in.
That's what I should have done.
We get to be friends and girlfriends for the next, somebody gonna keep me on track here? For the next, when are you done? Hour and 10 minutes, you have to go get the kiddies? 10:50, is that right? Okay, perfect. So I just wanna talk a few minutes and share the word with you, but I also wanna hear from you. So I really want this to be a conversation. So if I had a title for this talk, I probably would call it Parenting with a Promise. Parenting with a Promise, called to create. And so I want us to begin to really think about our parenting as a partnership with God, because that's really what it is. I want to start just with these disclaimers, right? The second thing that I want you to think about as I jump into what I think is a little bit of a framework is I am here not as an expert. If anybody tells you that there's such a thing as a child care or child rearing expert, they are lying. It is a lie from the pit of hell. I don't believe that anybody is ever an expert at raising children or being a parent, but what I come to talk to you from is my experience. So I'm not an expert, but I just want to share what my experience is. And the last thing is this is like Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So even though we have a camera going on me, when it's time for Q&A, maybe if we could turn that camera off a little bit, because this, and Allie says yes and Ryan says yes, because this is only valuable when you bring your authentic self and you bring your authentic questions. And so it always has to be a safe place when we come together as sisters to talk about the things that really matter, right? And so the camera is going to go off towards the end. For those of you who don't know me, there's some faces in the room that I haven't really met before. There's some that I've seen before. It's good to see you again. I'm Shenay Shumake. My husband and I have been married for almost 30 years. Yay. Amen to that. That's a whole nother workshop in and of itself, right? Yeah, you guys know that. If you're wives, you know that. The other part is that we have 4 children. Our oldest will turn 30 in December. Our second oldest, she's Nia, and Nia works as a writer. She's written for Refinery 29, she's written for Pop Sugar, and she's written for a couple other publications. But I think what she most is proud of is that she works as a creative writer and a teacher for 3rd and 4th graders, even some 2nd graders, in a few different schools in the city who have all experienced some kind of trauma. And so she teaches creative writing as an expression of how do we deal with emotions and how do we deal with hard things happening in our lives. And my daughter Micah is almost 27 in June. And Micah is a multi-hyphenate, and the hyphens keep growing every couple months or so. She adds something else to the hyphenate. But Micah is my uber creative kid that just never wanted to live in anybody's box, right? And so Micah does some design work. Micah does some graphic design as well as photo editing. So she works full time as a creative. My son is Caleb. Caleb is 25. And Caleb just won Motown Music Accelerator. Wow. And so he won that last year. So he's traveled back and forth. He's done some promo work, and he's working full time as a musician. And he also works with Nia teaching songwriting to the kids that are part of Nia's classroom. And then my baby is Zoe. And Zoe just turned 23. She just graduated from Calvin University last year with a bachelor's in music and philosophy. And she's just trying to figure out her next steps, whether she's going to seminary or whether she's going to work full time. And so that is my family, with the exception of Judah. Juju is the best person on planet Earth. He is 4 years old. He is Judah Mercy, and he is my grandson. And like, I used to think that people were so whack when they talked about like grandkids are the reward for raising children. It's absolutely true. Like, it is true in every, like, he's on my phone right now. Like, he's in the pictures, you know, like the old school movies where they have the grandmother, she's like flipping out the wallet, trying to show all the kids. I'm like, look at Juju. Like, look at him. Let me show you this. And we went on vacation, and like, so he is the best. And the coolest thing about being a grandparent is when the grandkids say like, I mean, when they say like smart things to their parent, you like, see, God does not let sin go unpunished. I am so grateful. Like, he is giving you double for my trouble, and I love every single moment of it. So that part is really, really fun. So that's my family, and I'll talk more about our journey and me a little bit as we go on, but I wanted to just give you real quick what I think is a really important framework when it comes to raising kids that are creatives, if you could say that. I think the first part of the framework is foundational. You know, what is the ethos of your family? Every family has an ethos. Every family has a culture. Every family has an environment. What is the ethos of your family? And we'll talk about that a little bit more. I think the second thing that we got to take a look at is like preparational. Okay, so the first is foundational. The second is preparational. When we say preparational, we're saying, how are we preparing our children for the world that is to come? It's not for this world today, but for what this culture is going to be, for what this generation and society and community is going to need. Like, how do we prepare our children today for the world that's to come 20 years from now? And I'll talk a little bit about how we do that in our household, or how we did that in our household. And our last part of that framework, if you think of it as like a tripod, the last part of that is inspirational. How do I stay inspired so that I can encourage my children to be inspired? When I talk about ethos, I talk about culture. The way I describe culture is like this. There's a story of these two fish, and they're swimming along in the water, and they're young fish, and they're having this conversation about the day. And as they're swimming in one direction, another fish comes in a different direction, and he's an older fish. And he looks at the two young fish and he says, "Hey boys," or "Hey girls, how's the water?" And they go, "Oh, the water's great, the water's fine, and have a good day." And the older fish keeps swimming along on their way. And when the older fish is out of earshot, the two young fish look at each other and they say, "What is water?" See, culture is that thing that's difficult to define, but we all swim in it. Grace has a culture, and so does your family. Your family has a culture. You have a way of doing things, you have a way of communicating, you have a way of understanding each other, and you have a way of sharing with one another what is important and what's critical and what is not. Is that making sense to everyone? And I think what's of primary importance is really taking a look at your family, looking at the ethos of your family, why you do what you do, why you believe what you believe, what do you believe, and how does that affect everyday life, and looking at the culture of your family and saying, is this the water that we want to swim in? Is this the water that we want our kids to swim in? And how do we create the kind of water that we want our kids to swim in? When you take a look at scripture, I'm not going to turn there for time's sake because I really want to hear more from you guys and I do the talking. But if you look at Genesis 18 and 20 and those verses that are there, it's the story of God showing up and having a conversation about his promise to Abraham and to Sarah to give them a son, Isaac. And she was way past her prime, and so was he. I mean, she was 90, he was 100 and something when Isaac was born. Can y'all imagine giving birth at the age of 90? Oh my gosh, can you imagine nursing a baby at the age of 90? Oh my gosh, all of it is a miracle. Even the fact that God shows up and put eggs in her body. From, basic biology, every girl is born with so many eggs in her ovaries. And after they're released and you've gone through menopause, there are no more there. So God had to put eggs in her body and then give her the strength to well, first of all, let's be honest. Give her the strength to even want to be bothered with Abraham, okay? All right, so give her the strength to even want to be bothered with Abraham. Then make a baby, and then push out a baby, and then nurse a baby, right? So it's all in this context that God shows up, and he has a conversation to remind them of what he is about to do. And in that conversation, somewhere in the middle of the story in Genesis chapter 18, God actually says to Abraham, he says, look, I'm not going to hide from you what I'm doing, because I've chosen you to command your children and to command your household after me, that they would live out righteousness and justice in the earth. You are a family because there's something that God is commanding you to do. And it's connected to his promise. Now, you can say all day long, scientists can say all day long, biologists can say all day long, no, you're a family because a man and a woman got together and they made a baby. Or you're a family because you've chosen to adopt children and bring them into your home. Or you're a family because however you want to define what your family looks like today. But if we really get to the root of a God who is an intentional God, who tells the sea to go this far and no more, come on, y'all. That God has a purpose and an intention for your family. There's something that he needs your family to bring to the earth. There's a promise that he has for your family and for your household. And he's chosen you to be a mom, whether you have given birth to children, whether you are a kinship adoption, whether you have adopted other children, or whether you have nurtured children on your block. God has chosen you because he's commanded you to bring something that he wants here. And you can't ever forget about that. And you have to take the time in your household to really dig into, okay, what does this look like? And it goes beyond a family mission statement. It goes all the way to what is in the core and the fiber and the DNA and the culture of my heart and this household so that my children are brought up into this. When people ask me, we had a family conversation, and my husband and I had an individual conversation about, hey, they want me to talk about raising creative kids. What do y'all think? And what we unanimously agreed upon was that our goal was not to raise creative kids. Our goal was to create a culture of permission, not permissive. We did not have a permissive culture. We had Flet and I are conservative, and we had a very conservative household. But we had a lot of fun, and we had a household that gave our kids a lot of permission. Now, what was the permission? You can try anything you want to try. You can do anything you want to do. We're here for it. My only rule is if I buy supplies, you are going to finish whatever it is that the supplies are for, because I'm not throwing away money. That was our, and so we wanted them to try new things. It was a lifestyle orientation, but it was a lifestyle orientation because Flet and I are creative. It was in us, we were doing creative things. We come from a creative family. My mom is a writer. Like Norflet's dad plays every single instrument. Like Norflet's mom was writing plays. Like it just goes, like there's not a single person in my family pretty much that has taken, and my sister is a makeup artist, that has taken a very traditional route of what they want to offer to the world. So a lot of the creativity, I think, was innate. Like we just got like these social media phrases like creatives. Like it didn't exist. Y'all, the iPhone's not even 15 years old. You know what I mean? Like my kid is almost 30, which means that for the first 15 years of her life, I had to make this stuff up. Like I couldn't go on Instagram and be like, oh, this looks fun. Let's figure out how we can make a fish tank out of a bucket. Like, no, you're not doing that because those resources are not yet available to you yet. And I was grateful for that to some degree because like social media can be like such a monster of comparison, and comparison is like the thief of everything. And so I'm glad that I didn't have that. Now, trust me, we Gen X moms found other ways to compare ourselves. Like we found other things that were equally soul robbing. But I just want to say that like it was innate. It was really something that was a part of us. Like we talked a lot this morning about like, what is our family philosophy? And I think, we believe every child is creative. Like that has never been a question at all in our household. That's not even a debate. If you ask anyone, we all would say every single child is creative. I think the issue becomes when they get older, sometimes we can kill that. And I think when that turning point kind of happens, then we have to teach kids to do intentionally what they once did instinctively. Does that make sense? Yeah, so I would say like you're parenting with a promise. Like what is the ethos of your family? What does God have specifically for you? We don't use the phrase to say we're a creative family. We've never used that phrase before, that we're a creative family. It's always what other parts of our family has said to us, oh, you guys have a creative family. And it's like, I guess we do have a creative family. But what also was a part of our ethos was like, we really believe like deeply, and the language for it now I think is here, is like, we believe that priests are artisans. Like, we believe that, 2 Peter talks to us about being a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, set apart for God's own purpose and use. Well, what does that look like? Like, if we're set apart, that doesn't mean that like we live in a house and in a neighborhood and in a church and we never impact community. Like what that means is that we live as God has called us to live in the midst of community. And so part of that for us, coming from a Pentecostal perspective, is like we have a theology of the Spirit, and our theology of the Spirit includes that the Holy Spirit, that God is a creative God. I want to show you something real quick, if you would turn with me here, because I want you to see this one. In Exodus chapter 31. And this is a scripture that like we've held on to a long time and we've talked about a long time. And it's, it's all the names. So Exodus 31, and I'm just going to read a couple verses. I'm reading from the ESV. The Lord said to Moses, "See, I have called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Ur of the tribe of Judah, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with ability and intelligence, with knowledge and all craftsmanship." But get this, to devise artistic designs. Like, who knew that was there? To work in gold, silver, and bronze, in cutting stones for setting, in carving wood, to work in every craft. And behold, I have appointed with him Oholiab, the son of Ahisamach of the tribe of Dan, and I have given to all able men ability, that they may make all that I have commanded of you. And yes, the Old Testament context of that is that God had given Moses some instructions about the building of the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, where his presence wanted to dwell. But here's the thing. In the New Testament context, Paul tells us that we have a treasure in earthen vessels, that our treasure is not made by hands, just like that tabernacle was in the Old Testament. But now, because of Jesus, his Spirit indwells us. And if he is the same, if he was that God then, he's the same God today, which means the same way the Spirit of God anointed people, covered people, filled people for the purpose of making something beautiful. Guess what he's doing today? He's doing the same thing today. He wants to make in you and of your life and of your family something beautiful. And we do that with him, our yielding to him, our partnership with him, our relationship with him, and our permission, right? We give him permission. When you were talking, Allie, and you were talking about like the piano and making, like you do the piano and you wish you had picked it up, stay with it. Like, I think for me, when it comes to like raising creative children, in our experience, it was never goal-oriented as much as it was lifestyle-oriented. We felt like the arts made our lives full. We felt like creativity and inspiration made our lives full. And so because of that, we exposed our kids to whatever we could expose our kids to, and they had permission to enjoy it or not. But when we saw that they enjoyed it and they had an aptitude for it, then we began to invest in it. Our kids went to a performing arts school in the city. All four of them did. They started there from kindergarten, went all the way up. So they were reading music. Like Nia is a writer. Nia originally went to U of M for neuroscience and then was like, no, I want to transfer to literature, science, and arts, and I want to write. And we were like, cool, that's awesome. But she also wrote her first play when she was 7. It was called Christmas Land. She was obsessed with Christmas. She wanted it every day of the week. And so what do you want to do for your birthday? And she was like, I want to write a play. Her birthday is December 23rd. So we moved all the furniture out of the house. I called my friend who loved to sew. She made costumes. We got rented chairs for our living room and dining room, and we called it Shumake Playhouse, and we called it Christmas Land. Because that's what she wanted to do for her birthday. So these things were just innate. We weren't saying this is who we're going to raise. We were just saying, how do we continue fanning the flame of wonder? Wow. There was this place, I'm an East Sider, I live on the West Side now, but I'm an East Sider. I grew up in 94 Maross, and there was a place over there called Arts and Scraps. Yeah, y'all remember Arts and Scraps? Arts and Scraps is a dream. Now, Arts and Scraps will have your house looking a mess because you're just like, why do we have this? But Arts and Scraps was awesome. And so I would take Micah to Arts and Scraps. And Micah had this thing where she just wanted to cut clothes. And so we just would go to Salvation Army, find as many t-shirts as possible, and she was cutting out the clothes. We would go to the movies to see Jonas Brothers. Any Jonas Brothers fans in the house? Anybody who would admit they're Jonas Brothers fans? Let me tell you, Micah's email address was micahjonasfansshumake@gmail.com. And yes, I put you on blast because she still has it, y'all. But like, she was a big time Jonas fan. And so when we went to the movies to see the little concert that they did, she would grab all the old 3D glasses, pop out the lenses, paint them with nail polish, all different, and sell them at school for $5. Why? I don't know. But we just wanted to fan the flame. So we bought her more nail polish because she needed other colors. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, we wanted to keep fanning this flame of wonder. Like, God puts in our hearts wonder, to be awestruck, which is why you can lay on the grass with a kid and look in the sky and see animals. Because like, there is this part of us that longs to create just like our Creator. Like we want to do that. We get restless when we don't do that. And being a mathematician or being a neuroscience or being a lawyer or a doctor or serving in more of the applied sciences fields, it does not make you any less a creative. All a creative is a person who solves problems or who brings to life what people never thought of before. So in that way, we're all creatives. We might not all make our living that way, but we all are solving problems and bringing to life things that people have never seen before, ideas that people have never seen before. I told you the first part of the framework was foundational. The second part of the framework was preparational. How are we preparing our kids for the world to come? That kind of preparation, I think, has everything to do with the heart. Like, how are we teaching our kids to respond to God so that they can respond to others? So we're a hot mess. We took Judah to school, his first day of school. It was like 10 of us. We were like 10 deep. It was bad, y'all. My mom was there. My sister, who lives on this side of town, drove from there. Like her dad was there, his dad was there, and his Mimi, which is Juju's other grandmother, was there. Like it was bad. Like, and I saw the most amazing thing. There was a mom. She was dropping off her kid to school. Now Juju's 4, so it's preschool. And her mom leaned down and her mom said to her, "What are we gonna do if somebody cries today?" And she said, "We're gonna tell them everything is gonna be okay and we're gonna give them a hug." And I was like, why didn't I think of that? Like, you know, like it was such creativity, but it was such empathy. Like she's preparing her to live in a world that's cynical as an empath. Do you get what I'm saying? And I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. As parents, you are constantly creating. You know why? As moms, you're constantly creating because you're constantly innovating. You're constantly pivoting. You're constantly figuring out a new way to say the same thing that you have said 30 times because you know good and well that after a while they get desensitized to no. Like you're creating all the time. So how do we take that and how do we really value it, amplify it, and give our kids permission to hold on to their wonder as long as they possibly can. And the last part of that is just being inspirational. Like, I'm gonna be honest with y'all gonna be mad at me, it's okay. I'm gonna get in the car, I'm gonna go back to the West Side. But I always I get it, but I always was taken aback a little bit by all the things the social events that we would be invited to and children wouldn't be allowed. Now I get it when you're paying $50 a plate or $100 a plate or $120 or whatever. No, I get that. But what I also know is like children need to know how to be in various contexts. Amen. And my thought was always, okay, we're going to this fancy dinner. People are gonna be dressed up. The tables are gonna be decorated. The lighting is gonna be interesting. And there's all this creativity on display and I'm supposed to leave my kids at home? Like, I want them to see that. I want them to see other contexts. I want them to see what it's like to take something out of your mind and put it on a table. Like, I want them to see what it's like to put that on a plate. And so we, as our kids got a little bit older and could handle the theater, because, you know, like, that's real. You know what I'm saying? Like, but as they got a little older and could handle the theater, like every holiday, we tried to dress them up and go to the theater somewhere, you know, do something, or take them out to dinner once a year and a couple times a year where it's a fancy dinner. Because we wanted them to just see what's inspired. Because let's face it, some of these restaurants you're going there so you can see how cool what they put on the plate. You know you would rather have a Popeye's chicken sandwich, but you're interested in seeing how they presented the meal. Like sometimes that's what fine dining is about. It's not always about execution. It should be, but sometimes it's about all of the theater that goes into bringing you the plate. Am I right? And so I made sure that our kids had those experiences. Did we pay for Russian ballet? Yes. Did we pay for music lessons? We didn't have to because they went to a performing arts school that was a charter school in the city of Detroit. And, they learned how to read music at a very young age. At 5, they were learning to read. Most of them have lost that. Nia still reads. Zoe reads because she just got her degree in music and philosophy at Calvin. And she plays. Caleb he plays by ear, and he's a freak of nature with pretty perfect pitch, so he doesn't have to read, but it's not that he doesn't appreciate the discipline, he just doesn't. He's a pretty good ear. And so that inspiration part of it is not just for the kids, but it's also for you. Like my mother-in-law used to tell me this all the time, and I get it now. I wish I would have gotten this sooner. And there is no mom that ever says, I won't be better off if I take some me time. Like, you are always better off if you have some me time. And in a culture where I think in some ways the self-love, self-care, hashtag self-love, hashtag self-care, hashtag self-acceptance, hashtag self, more self. Oh, look, there's more self. Like, in that culture that we have that I can be cynical about sometimes, I think there's an authentic message there, but I do think that we have to balance that, but there's still an authentic message there. Like, you are only as fun. And do you want to be a fun mom? Absolutely. Anybody that tells you, like, oh, you're trying to be a fun mom, yeah, absolutely. Because I never want my kids to be like, did you even like children when you raised me? Like, do you even, because we get along best when I hit 40. Like, did you like me? Like, I never want my kids to feel like that parenting is such an obligation. Rather than a privilege and a joy. Amen. So I tried to live into that. Now, did I cry at night? Oh, absolutely. Yes, because my kids I was having a conversation with someone right before we started. Like, for almost 10 years of my life, I was either giving birth or had just given birth, or, giving birth, having just given birth, about to give birth, or definitely gonna be pregnant again because I just got back to the size I'm supposed to be, and Flet has that look in his eye. You know what I'm saying? So, like, that's real, that you do go in the bathroom and you cry. And then you see little hands under the door trying to get to you. You do have those moments where you feel overwhelmed. But as much as you can stay inspired, as much as you can get back to the things that you love to do, or find some things that are new that you never thought you love to do, then as long as you're doing that, then your heart remains open to wonder. And whatever you're putting in, you are like a sieve. It leaks right out to the kids. No matter how much you try to control yourself, no matter how much you try to really be, good-natured and all those things, whatever is happening on the inside of your heart, it just spills right out to your kids and to your family. And kids don't have language for a lot of what they feel. And so often their response to you is intuitive. They know something is not quite right, and they adjust their behavior to try to bring that balance to you. So whatever it is that you need to do to remain inspired, you need to do it. Like, I do things like that today. I love to go to the DIA and walk around by myself and see stuff. I also love going to the spa. MGM has an awesome spa. So if you ever see me in a casino, I'm not wasting God's money. I'm going to the spa because it's awesome. You find your inspiration so that you can give that to the kids. I was coaching a young mom a while ago, and she said, I don't have time to do some of the things that I want to do. And I'm like, you have all the time in the world. She's like, what? I'm like, listen, there's a resource in your routine. Like when you have a lot of kids, like I did, or even just one kid. Evie's the newest mom in the room, I think. Listen, I've known Evie since before Colin and her could say F and L together. So they used to call my husband Northflat instead of Northflat. So congratulations, Evie and Drake. But you need a routine. And that was gold for me. It's just to have a set time the kids got up, the set time the kids went to sleep. Because outside of those parameters, I could do me. You know what I mean? Like, I could do the things that I like to do. A lot of it included watching The Office late at night, but I needed to laugh. And laughter is important. And so I do not apologize for watching dumb things like The Office and Waterboy. Waterboy is my favorite movie. It's just, I know it surprises people, but it is my favorite movie. Yeah, it is. I'm complicated. We all are. So finding your inspiration, so foundational. Talk to the other adults in your household. What is the ethos of your household? What is the culture of your household? What does God want it to be? What do you want it to be? How are you partnering together with that? Number 2, preparational. How are you preparing your kids to live in a world 20 years from now? The hardest thing about that is knowing what the world is going to be 20 years from now. The easiest thing about that is knowing the one who makes the world and holds time in his hands, right? So that means that you have to live not just futuristically, but you have to live intimately with the Father so that he can inform you about your children. Like I love in Psalms, it's been like a hallmark scripture of grace. And remember back in the day you guys still doing the curtains? Yes. Yeah. Right. And one of the things in curtains was like, you form my secret parts. You form my inward parts. And so like, if we want to know the secrets about our kids, who they are, what they're called to do, what they're going to be like we got to talk to Jesus about that. Like, he didn't make us and then we made them. No, we're just conduits. And we're partners. And we're friends. And we're the village and we're the community in the raising of our children. But he's got secrets. He knows what he formed them to be in their inward parts. And so preparational, how do we get them ready for a world 20 years from now? One of the things that's been important to us that we would always say, very practically, find some catchphrases, not to be like cool, but just to drill into your kids. We would say to our kids all the time, you cannot do what everybody else does because you are like no one else. And that is something that we would tell them all the time. Nia was deathly afraid of going to school at 5. And I would just say, Nia, Jesus is with you. Jesus is with you wherever you go. So whatever my kids are doing, even at the age of being young 20s, they're moving out of their adulting phase, but they're still adulting. And no shade on y'all if y'all are millennial age or Gen Zers and you're still adulting. But I still tell them, Jesus is with you. Like he's with you wherever you go, whether you're standing next to the stage at the NBA or whether you're in an interview or whether you're in a classroom, Jesus is with you wherever you go. And at the end of the day, would you be bashful or ashamed of the things you said and the way you behave if you knew he was in a room with you? And that's not to be like who told you that? Satan, like the church lady from Saturday Night Live, but it definitely gives them a sense of gravity that God does not have grandchildren, y'all. God has children, and I'm his child, and I want you to be his child too, and that's your decision. But you need to know he's with you wherever you go. And so those catchphrases, My husband's dad would say to him all the time, there are no such thing as problems, only intelligent solutions. Now, are there such things as problems? Absolutely. Dad, yes, there are problems. But Dad is from the greatest generation. And so that generation is like, how do we figure this out? They never really gave themselves permission to say, like, I can't figure that out. And so, a lot of the conversations that we have are things that begin to shape who our kids are. And then inspirational, find what you love. Find what you love. I love to dance. And so, little known fact that I danced ballet for like 15 years and danced on point 5 of those years. Danced in New York as a summer intern as a kid. Like that was my jam, but I also loved to play basketball. So I was being recruited by colleges to play basketball too. Do you get that like these things don't really have correlation? They're just what we like to do. Flet's a soccer guy and a football guy, but Flet also taught himself to play guitar and he's taught himself to play piano because Dad plays every instrument and he sings. Like we don't need labels. You know what I mean? Like we don't need to be saying, are you going to be a musician? Are you going to be an athlete? Are you going to be a singer? Are you going to be a writer? We just need to let our kids be. Just get off their backs and let them be. Maybe they do like, putting salt in the oatmeal and smearing it on the wall. Okay, then buy them a canvas that they can smear the oatmeal on the wall and let them paint it when it's dry. You know what I mean? Like, just relax. Like, I can remember being like a 30-year-old parent and like, just relax. like, they're gonna be okay. Get off their backs. Nobody wants anybody on their backs like 24/7 a day. Did you do this? Did you pick that up? Did you put that there? Did you put that? Da-da-da-da. Now, has that come back to bite me? Absolutely. Because sometimes you're like, okay, did you wash the dishes? Okay, whose dishes are this? Okay, y'all here making charcuterie boards. Is anybody gonna put this in the, you know what I mean? So you're just like, so it bites you. There's a balance is what I'm saying. But for the most part, like do everything you can to guard their wonder.